Hey guys, welcome back. Tonight, we're stepping far beyond kings and empires, beyond pyramids and battlefields, into a question so simple it almost feels dangerous. What did early humans actually do all day? Not the Hollywood version, not the dramatic survival montage, but the real, quiet rhythm of life 40,000 years ago. Before alarms, before emails, before cities that never sleep. Tonight, in this History for Sleep journey, we'll walk through a single day in the Paleolithic world, from the first pale light touching stone to the careful tending of embers beneath a sky filled with unpolluted stars. You'll discover how hunter-gatherers really spent their time, how many hours they actually worked, what Paleolithic sleep habits reveal about your own restless nights, why cave art was more than decoration, and how storytelling around fire became humanity's first sanctuary against the dark. This isn't just ancient history, it's your history. Because the anxiety you sometimes feel, the pull toward nature, the strange comfort of sitting near a warm light at night, all of it was shaped long before civilization began. And by the end of this story, you may realize something unexpected. Early humans were not rushing. They were not endlessly distracted. They were not trapped in a cycle of constant productivity. They lived in rhythms of hunger and rest, danger and laughter, fear and warmth. And those rhythms still echo quietly inside you. So before you get comfortable, take a gentle moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if these deep sleep history stories help you find peace, sleep better, or simply reflect on our shared journey through time. Now, close your eyes, take a slow breath, and let the modern world fade just a little. The fire is waiting. Imagine you open your eyes, not beneath a ceiling, not beneath a blanket, but beneath a curve of ancient limestone that has held back wind and rain for thousands of winters. The ground beneath you is firm, uneven, faintly cool against your skin. There is the lingering scent of smoke in the air, soft and woody, mixed with the faint musk of animal hides stretched and dried beside the wall. A coal still glows in the ash at the center of the shelter, breathing out a thin ribbon of warmth into the pale blue of early dawn. Welcome to a morning 40,000 years ago. Do not worry. Tonight, as you listen, you are safe. But out there, beyond the mouth of the cave, the Paleolithic world does not forgive carelessness. This is not a dramatic exaggeration for bedtime stories or history for sleep. It is simply the truth of deep time, when early humans lived by attention, memory, and quiet cooperation. The sky outside is just beginning to soften from charcoal to silver. A chill drifts inward. You can hear something distant, perhaps wind moving through tall grass, perhaps the low call of an animal greeting the light. Your body stirs not because of an alarm, but because the rhythm of life has always followed the sun. In this world, circadian rhythm is not a wellness trend, it is survival. Anthropological research, from studies like Robert L. Kelly's work on the hunting and gathering way of life, reminds us that early humans did not rush from sleep into panic. They did not leap up in fear every dawn. Instead, mornings were deliberate, slow, observant. You shift slightly. Around you, others are still resting, wrapped in layered skins. A child murmurs softly. Someone near the entrance clears their throat. There is no leader barking orders, no clock demanding productivity.
In Paleolithic societies, as described in Man the Hunter and later fieldwork among groups like the Hadza, daily life was structured not by rigid hierarchy, but by fluid cooperation. The first task of the day is not hunting, it is noticing. Is the fire alive? Is the weather changing? Did any sound in the night suggest danger? This is the subtle art of attention that shaped the human mind long before writing, before cities, before civilization. You sit up. The cave mouth frames a wide valley washed in morning mist. Somewhere down there, herds may be grazing. Somewhere, edible roots wait beneath the soil. Somewhere, predators are also awaking. And yet, there is no frantic urgency. One of the quiet truths uncovered in Paleolithic societies is that survival was demanding but not constant chaos. Foragers, according to ethnographic parallels, often worked fewer hours than modern office workers. The world was dangerous, yes, but it was also rhythmic, predictable in its own ancient way. You rub your hands together to warm them and reach for a small piece of dried meat left from yesterday's meal. It is tough, smoky, sustaining. The morning meal in prehistory was rarely elaborate, but it was shared. And sharing is not sentimental, it is structural. In small bands of perhaps 20 to 40 individuals, cooperation increased survival odds dramatically. Food moved through the group, binding people together in invisible threads of obligation and trust. This is the backbone of hunter-gatherer life, as Graham Barker and others describe. Mobility, flexibility, deep ecological knowledge. The valley below is not nature in the abstract, it is a map stored in memory. You know which plants ripen first, which streams shrink in late summer, which animal trails bend toward water. This knowledge is not written down, it is embodied. It lives in stories told by the fire, in gestures, in demonstrations repeated across generations. As you stand and step toward the cave entrance, light brushes your face. The sun breaks the horizon gently, and the cold retreats inch by inch. For a moment, you simply breathe. The world is vast, untamed, but you belong to it completely. There is no separation between human and environment. Your ancestors are not conquering this land, they are negotiating with it daily. In this first hour of the morning, before gathering begins, before any hunt is planned, there is awareness. Early humans did not wake into emails or traffic. They woke into wind, into sky, into the presence of their community. And in that quiet awareness lies something surprising, not constant terror, but groundedness. The Paleolithic world was harsh, but it was also intimate. You knew every face around you, every footstep mattered. As the mist thins, a few others join you at the entrance. There are quiet nods, soft words. Today will require effort, yes. Roots must be dug. Perhaps tracks must be followed. Tools may need repair. But for now, there is simply dawn. And in this gentle unfolding of light, we begin to understand what early humans actually did all day. They paid attention. They listened. They cooperated. They moved with the rhythm of land and season. And as we drift deeper into this history for sleep, into this slow exploration of hunter-gatherer life, let the tension of the modern world loosen slightly. Because 40,000 years ago, morning began, not with noise, but with breath.
The breath of dawn has already touched your face, and yet you do not rise immediately. In this world, there is no alarm clock slicing through dreams, no glowing screen demanding attention. Waking up prehistoric was not an abrupt command, but a slow return to awareness. The light seeps gradually into the cave, filtering through dust and faint smoke, turning darkness into a muted gray.
Your eyelids flutter open because the sky has changed, because your body senses the shift long before your thoughts form words. This is how Paleolithic sleep habits worked, guided by light, by temperature, by the quiet rhythm of others breathing nearby. You feel the stiffness first. Your back presses against stone that has held the night's cold. Your shoulders ache faintly from yesterday's gathering and the steady tension of survival. There is no mattress cushioning you from the earth, no climate control smoothing away the seasons. Instead, your body has adapted over generations to sleep on hides layered over packed soil, to wake with a certain heaviness that eases only through movement. You roll slowly onto your side, and in that motion there is no rush. No one expects you to be productive within seconds. Anthropologists studying hunter-gatherers, including the Hadza of Tanzania described by Frank Marlowe, note that mornings unfold gradually. Conversation begins softly, a stretch here, a sigh there. The day is not attacked, it is entered. Your first instinct is not to reach for information, but for warmth. You turn your head toward the center of the shelter, toward the fire pit. There, beneath a thin crust of ash, lies the true heart of the group. You lean forward, brushing aside the powdery gray surface with a stick. A faint glow answers you. Relief spreads through your chest. The coals survived the night. In Paleolithic societies, the fire was more than comfort. It was protection, cooking, light, a signal, a gathering point. Checking the embers was not a chore. It was reassurance that life continued. You feed the glow with a few dry fragments of wood saved carefully from the previous evening. A thin curl of smoke rises, then a small flame trembles into being. Around you, others notice. A child stirs, an elder shifts closer. The cave warms by degrees. This small act, tending the fire at dawn, anchors the group. It is the prehistoric equivalent of checking the pulse of the world. And perhaps this is where modern discomfort begins to echo across millennia. Many people today wake in the middle of the night, unsettled, confused, believing something is wrong with their sleep. Yet historical and anthropological evidence suggests that segmented or biphasic sleep was once common. Before artificial light stretched the day unnaturally long, humans often slept in two phases: a first sleep after dusk, a waking period around midnight, and then a second sleep until dawn. In that quiet interval between sleeps, people might talk softly, reflect, even tend the fire. Research into Paleolithic sleep habits and later pre-industrial societies reveals that waking in the dark was not a disorder, but a rhythm. Your ancestors may have opened their eyes in the deepest night, listened to the wind outside, checked the coals, and then drifted back into dreams without anxiety. Imagine that moment now. The cave is black except for a faint orange pulse in the ashes. The world outside is vast and unseen. You wake briefly, not with panic, but with awareness. You shift closer to the warmth, hear the breathing of your kin, and let sleep return. There is no clock telling you that you should be unconscious for 8 uninterrupted hours. There is only the body's ancient pattern. Studies of hunter-gatherer sleep show fewer chronic insomnia complaints than in industrial societies. Light, darkness, community, and physical exertion aligned the nervous system with the environment. As you sit beside the reawakened fire in the early morning light, you may begin to sense something unexpected. Waking up prehistoric was not harder, it was different. It required attention to subtle signals rather than obedience to schedules. Your muscles loosen as the flame grows. Someone beside you murmurs a greeting. Outside, the horizon brightens fully, and the valley takes shape again. The day will soon ask for movement, for gathering, perhaps for hunting. But right now, in this gentle space between sleep and action, there is a quiet understanding. The heart of the group is alive, the coals glow, and your body, shaped by tens of thousands of years of evolution, remembers how to wake with the light.
The fire now burns steadily, and with it comes a subtle clarity. Morning in the Paleolithic world is not a single moment, but a gradual unfolding. And to understand waking up prehistoric is to understand that night itself was once different. As the light strengthens at the cave mouth, you may remember something else. Sometime during the night, you stirred. Not fully awake, not fully asleep. A thin seam of consciousness opened, then gently closed again. In our modern world, such an interruption is often labeled insomnia. But in the deeper timeline of human evolution, this pattern was familiar. Many scholars examining pre-industrial societies have described segmented or biphasic sleep as ordinary. Paleolithic sleep habits likely followed a rhythm shaped by darkness itself. When the sun disappeared, there was little to do beyond tending the fire, speaking softly, perhaps shaping a tool by flickering light. Eventually, the body yielded to a first sleep. Hours later, sometime near midnight, it might rise briefly into awareness. In that still interval, the world felt vast and intimate at once. You might hear wind combing across the valley, the distant crack of ice, or the quiet breathing of your kin. There was no anxiety attached to this waking, no glowing clock informing you that something had gone wrong. Instead, there was space. Some anthropological accounts and historical records, even into medieval Europe, describe people using this middle watch for reflection, quiet conversation, even storytelling. In a Paleolithic cave, that middle waking may have involved checking the embers again, shifting closer to warmth, or listening for unusual sounds beyond the entrance. Then, as naturally as it began, sleep returned for a second phase. This rhythm aligns closely with how light and melatonin interact without artificial interference. In communities without electric light, sleep tends to synchronize with the environment. Research among groups such as the Hadza suggests that while total sleep duration may not be dramatically longer than in industrial societies, the pattern is less pressured, less bound by rigid expectation. There is no performance anxiety attached to rest. As you sit now in the strengthening morning glow, muscles loosening and fingers warmed by flame, you sense how this ancient pattern shaped the nervous system. Sleep was communal. Safety was collective. The presence of others breathing nearby reduced the hypervigilance that isolates many modern sleepers. You were rarely alone in the dark, and darkness itself was not an enemy to conquer, but a condition to inhabit. The valley outside brightens fully now, revealing contours of land etched by seasons long before memory. Your body, having completed its 2 arcs of rest, feels alert in a grounded way, not jolted by caffeine, not shocked into action, but steadily present. This is the quiet power embedded within Paleolithic sleep habits. They were adaptive, flexible, responsive to temperature, to predators, to moonlight. On colder nights, the group might cluster tighter around the fire. On warmer nights, some may have drifted nearer the entrance, letting cool air pass over skin. The pattern shifted subtly with season and landscape. And perhaps here lies a gentle lesson for those listening to this history for sleep. If you find yourself waking in the night, mind flickering in the dark, it may not be a flaw, but an echo. An inheritance from ancestors who once rose briefly to check the coals, to listen to the wind, to ensure that the heart of their small world still glowed. In the cave, someone now adds another branch to the flame. Sparks leap upward and vanish. A low murmur passes between 2 figures near the wall. The day will soon divide into roles. Gatherers scanning the landscape for edible plants, hunters reading tracks pressed into damp soil, toolmakers refining edges of stone. But before all of that, there is this threshold, this gentle crossing from sleep into awareness, from stillness into motion. You stand slowly,
stretching arms overhead. Vertebrae align, blood moves more freely. The earth beneath your feet is firm and real. No notification has intruded upon you. No headline has intruded upon your first thoughts. Instead, your first act has been to protect warmth, to sustain fire, to ensure continuity. And in doing so, you have participated in a ritual older than agriculture, older than cities, older than written history. Waking up prehistoric was not dramatic, it was attentive, it was relational. It was shaped by light, by community, by the steady intelligence of the body. As the sun clears the horizon completely and spills gold across stone and grass, you take one last glance at the embers, now fully alive. The heart beats, the group breathes, the second sleep has ended, and the day begins not with urgency, but with quiet readiness.
The sun has now lifted itself fully above the horizon, and the cave is no longer gray, but softly golden. The fire crackles with a steady rhythm, and somewhere outside, you can hear the faint rush of water moving over stone. A bird calls once, sharply, then falls silent. This is the hour when modern minds imagine breakfast, steaming bowls, roasted beans ground into coffee, the ritual of 3 meals a day. But 40,000 years ago, there is no cereal, no coffee, no guarantee. In the Paleolithic world, breakfast is not a fixed event. It is an opportunity, and sometimes it does not come at all. You crouch beside the fire and reach for what remains from yesterday. A small pouch woven from plant fibers holds a handful of dried berries, shriveled but still sweet. Another member of the group passes a strip of smoked meat, dark and tough, preserved carefully over slow coals. You tear it with effort. Your jaw works steadily. There is the soft, rhythmic sound of chewing, of teeth pressing into sinew. No plates, no scheduled pause in a calendar, just sustenance when it is available. Anthropologists such as Robert L. Kelly and the editors of Man the Hunter describe hunter-gatherer diets as variable and opportunistic. Food was not divided neatly into breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Instead, eating followed availability, season, and success. If a hunt had gone well the day before, the morning might include leftover meat. If not, perhaps only a few nuts or tubers dug the previous afternoon, and sometimes nothing at all. This unpredictability shaped not only culture, but metabolism. Your body, evolved in this context, does not panic at the absence of immediate calories. It shifts. This is what modern science now calls metabolic flexibility, the ability to move between burning carbohydrates and fats for fuel. In the Paleolithic world, this was not a biohacking trend or a podcast topic. It was simply life. You swallow the last of the dried meat and sip water carried in a simple skin pouch. It tastes faintly of earth and smoke. Outside, 2 figures are already moving toward the valley, scanning for signs of edible plants. There is no rush to eat heavily before leaving. Energy comes from a long memory of adaptation. Studies of contemporary hunter-gatherers, including the Hadza, show that meals are often spaced irregularly. Some days include large caloric intake after a successful hunt. Other days involve modest foraging returns. The body adjusts without dramatic complaint. Contrast this with the modern expectation of constant feeding, of snacks every few hours to avoid discomfort. Here, hunger is not an urgency, it is information, a signal that guides movement and effort. You notice the subtle clarity that comes with a light stomach. Your senses feel sharper. The valley's details stand out, the curve of a distant tree, the darker patch of earth that might conceal roots. This state of mild fasting is not weakness, but readiness. It prepares you to move, to
to search, to think. In today's world, many attempt to recreate this through intermittent fasting, seeking benefits that our ancestors experienced as ordinary. They did not skip breakfast as a discipline. They simply lived within cycles of abundance and scarcity. The sound of someone cracking a nut against a flat stone echoes briefly inside the cave. A child laughs at the stubborn shell. An older woman gestures toward a patch of sunlight near the entrance where certain wild greens might grow later in the season. Food is discussed not with anxiety, but with curiosity. What is ripening? What is migrating? The landscape is both pantry and teacher. As you rise to join the others preparing to leave, you feel neither stuffed nor deprived. You feel balanced. The morning meal, if it can be called that, has been modest, but it has also been sufficient. The body remembers thousands of generations of this pattern. It remembers that energy can be drawn from within as well as without. And as we continue this history for sleep, drifting gently through the daily rhythms of early humans, let that idea settle. Breakfast, in the Paleolithic sense, was not a ritual of abundance. It was a moment of alignment with the land, with uncertainty, with the quiet intelligence of metabolic flexibility that once defined human life.
You step beyond the mouth of the cave now, and the cool morning air wraps around you with a clarity that feels almost sharp. The fire still burns behind you, a steady guardian of warmth, but out here the valley opens wide, brushed with gold and pale green. There is no table set waiting, no certainty that food will appear at a predictable hour, and yet there is no panic in your chest. Hunger in this Paleolithic world is not an enemy to silence immediately. It is a quiet teacher. The soundscape shifts as you move farther from the cave. Pebbles press under your feet. Somewhere nearby, a companion cracks another nut with a smooth stone, the rhythmic tap echoing briefly. Farther off, the stream continues its patient song, water gliding over rock in a continuous whisper. These are the sounds of morning sustenance in a time before agriculture. In this chapter of What Did Early Humans Actually Do All Day, the absence of cereal and coffee is not deprivation, it is context. You bend to examine a patch of earth where small edible tubers sometimes grow. The soil is cool and slightly damp. Your fingers work methodically, guided by memory rather than written recipe. In hunter-gatherer societies described by Graham Barker and others, food acquisition was deeply embedded in ecological knowledge. Breakfast was not prepared in a kitchen, it was discovered in the landscape. And sometimes it was postponed. There are mornings when the body moves for hours before meaningful calories are consumed. Yet the system holds steady. This is metabolic flexibility not as a buzzword, but as inheritance. When glycogen stores thin, the body turns to fat. When food is plentiful, it stores without guilt. There is no moral language attached to eating or fasting, no cheat days, no spreadsheets of macros, just adaptation. Modern men and women experiment with intermittent fasting to regain what constant availability has dulled, the ability to function clearly without constant feeding. But here, 40,000 years ago, that clarity is ordinary. You feel it now as you straighten up. There is a lightness in your limbs, a subtle focus in your eyes. Hunger sharpens attention rather than clouding it. You scan the valley not just for food, but for signs of movement, for shifts in wind direction, for subtle disturbances in grass that might reveal small animals. Food is woven into awareness. As Richard Lee's work among hunter-gatherers suggests, foraging is rarely frantic. It is skilled, social, and often accompanied by conversation. A few others join you, pointing out a shrub where berries may ripen in another week. There is discussion, but no argument over portions. If little is found this morning, the group adjusts. Perhaps a successful hunt later will rebalance the day. The three-meal structure so familiar in industrial society is a cultural invention.
stabilized by agriculture and clock time. In Paleolithic societies, energy intake rose and fell like breath. This rhythm likely trained insulin sensitivity, fat utilization, and hormonal balance in ways researchers are only beginning to measure. Yet the emotional tone around food remained calm. There is a profound difference between chosen fasting and enforced starvation. The former carries agency, the latter, fear. Early humans lived in a space between these extremes, navigating scarcity with collective resilience. As you walk along the edge of the stream, you pause to drink again. The water is cold and clean, slipping down your throat with a freshness no roasted bean could replicate. You kneel briefly, listening to the layered sounds of the valley. Wind in grass, distant calls, the faint crunch of someone casting a root with their teeth. You realize something subtle. Breakfast here is not a moment, but a continuum. A handful of berries now, a strip of meat later, perhaps nothing until midday. And yet the day does not feel incomplete. It feels responsive, flexible. This is the deeper viral factor hidden beneath the surface of this history for sleep. Early humans did not structure their day around food. They structured food around their day. Movement came first. Awareness came first. The landscape dictated timing. And because of that, the body remained adaptable. As the sun climbs higher, you feel warmth spread across your shoulders. Your stomach may growl faintly, but it does so without drama. It is simply part of the conversation between body and world. You glance back toward the cave in the distance, smoke rising thinly into the brightening sky. The heart still beats there. The group remains connected. Whether the next bite comes in minutes or hours, you know this. Your ancestors did not crumble between meals. They moved, they watched, they trusted the intelligence of a system shaped by thousands of seasons. And as we drift gently deeper into this exploration of Paleolithic life, let the idea settle softly within you. Breakfast without cereal, without coffee, without certainty, was not chaos, it was alignment. Hunger was not a failure. It was a reminder that the human body was built to bend, to wait, to endure, and to thrive within the quiet elasticity of metabolic flexibility.
The valley has warmed now, and the mist that clung to the grass has thinned into invisibility. You move beyond the open ground and toward the edge of the forest, where shade deepens and the air cools again. If hunting is the story most often told about early humans, gathering is the quieter truth that sustained them. In this chapter of What Did Early Humans Actually Do All Day? History for Sleep, we step into the green cathedral of the Paleolithic world, where survival depends not on speed or strength, but on knowledge. The forest is not silent, but its sounds are layered and soft. Leaves brush against one another. Insects hum faintly in the filtered sunlight. A twig snaps under careful feet. You do not rush here. Every movement is deliberate. Gathering is not casual wandering. It is concentrated attention stretched across hours. Anthropologists such as Richard Lee and Robert L. Kelly have emphasized that in many hunter-gatherer societies, plant foods contributed a substantial portion of daily calories. Tubers, nuts, seeds, fruits, greens, these formed the backbone of survival. The hunt might bring prestige, but gathering brought consistency. You crouch beside a patch of low plants, running your fingers lightly along the leaves. You know this one. Its root is edible when roasted, bitter but nourishing. Just beside it grows another plant, nearly identical in shape, but with a faint purple vein along the stem. That one you avoid. The difference between the two is subtle, and yet the consequence of confusion could be severe. In a world without written labels or emergency rooms, botanical literacy is not optional, it is encyclopedic.
Some researchers estimate that foragers may have recognized hundreds of plant species within their territory, knowing not only which were edible, but when they ripened, how they tasted at different stages, how they must be prepared to remove toxins. You move deeper into the forest, where mushrooms cluster near a fallen log. The air smells damp and earthy. You pause. There are two varieties here. One with a smooth cap and pale underside, another with faint spots and a slightly bitter scent. You reach only for the first. This is not luck, it is memory layered across generations, taught not through textbooks, but through repetition, observation, and correction. In Paleolithic societies, knowledge lived in people, and much of this knowledge lived especially in women and elders. Modern narratives often romanticize the hunter, but ethnographic work among groups like the Hadza reveals the central role of gatherers, frequently women, whose steady work ensured daily sustenance. They knew where water pooled longest in dry seasons, which bark could be chewed for medicine, which seeds could be ground into paste. As you watch an older woman move through the undergrowth, you notice the calm precision in her gestures. She does not hesitate. Her hands move with quiet authority. A younger member follows, observing closely, absorbing not only information, but judgment, when to harvest, when to leave, when to return later. There is reverence here, though unspoken. Survival depends on her discernment. The forest becomes a living library, and she is one of its fluent readers. In this slow rhythm of gathering, there is something profoundly humbling. It demands patience. It demands humility before complexity. One careless assumption, one misidentified mushroom could carry grave consequences. Yet fear does not dominate the atmosphere. Respect does. Respect for the land, respect for accumulated wisdom. As we drift deeper into this history for sleep, let that respect settle gently. Early humans did not simply roam, they studied, they memorized, they listened to subtle variations in leaf shape, in scent, in soil texture. The forest is not chaos, it is structured knowledge waiting to be read correctly. And in this quiet labor, this backbone of Paleolithic survival, we begin to see a different kind of strength, not explosive, not loud, but enduring.
You move deeper still beneath the canopy, where sunlight breaks into scattered fragments across moss and bark. The air grows cooler, richer, carrying the scent of soil and crushed leaves. In this part of the forest, sound changes. It is not absence, but refinement. A distant woodpecker taps in steady rhythm. Insects hum in soft, layered tones. Somewhere nearby, a child whispers a question, and an elder answers with a gesture rather than words. Gathering is not noisy work. It is an apprenticeship in silence. In this chapter of What Did Early Humans Actually Do All Day? History for Sleep, we begin to understand that the backbone of Paleolithic survival was not brute force, but perception. You kneel beside a cluster of small green leaves, nearly identical to dozens around them. To the untrained eye, the forest appears repetitive, chaotic even. But to the gatherer, it is textured with meaning. This leaf is slightly serrated at the edge. That one curls differently under the stem. One carries nourishment, the other carries danger. A mistake is not corrected by a quick online search. It is remembered through story, sometimes through loss. This is why knowledge here is sacred. It is cumulative, fragile, embodied. Studies in the hunting and gathering way of life, and later ethnographic research, reveal that foragers often possess detailed understanding of hundreds of plant species within their range. Not simply their names, but their behaviors. Which ones flourish after fire? Which roots swell after rain? Which berries must be soaked, roasted, or crushed before safe consumption? This is not instinct. It is disciplined observation practiced from childhood.
As you watch an older woman reach gently beneath a shrub to uncover edible tubers, you notice how she pauses before pulling. She studies the soil texture. She glances at the neighboring plants. She senses patterns invisible to you. Around her, younger members mirror her posture. They're not merely collecting food, they are absorbing a worldview. The forest becomes teacher, and she is its translator. In many hunter-gatherer societies described in Mam the Hunter and Studies of the Hadza, women's gathering efforts contributed consistent daily caloric returns. While hunts could fail, roots and seeds often did not. This reliability elevated gatherers into quiet pillars of the group's survival. Their expertise shaped migration decisions, seasonal timing, and risk assessment. Yet the emotional tone of their work was not prideful dominance, but calm competence. You feel it in the pace. No one hurries unnecessarily. No one shouts. The work unfolds like breathing. There is a deep respect here, especially for elders. Wrinkles around the eyes are not signs of decline, but maps of memory. Each crease holds recollections of drought years, of plants that once flourished then vanished, of subtle shifts in flowering cycles. Their knowledge stretches across decades, connecting past landscapes to present choices. When they speak softly, others listen, not because of formal authority, but because survival has proven their discernment. You crouch beside a patch of mushrooms again, this time observing rather than reaching. The cap texture, the underside gills, the faint scent rising in the damp air. Every detail matters. The forest demands humility. It rewards patience. And in this patient attention lies something modern life rarely trains: sustained focus without distraction. There are no notifications here, no headlines intruding upon thought, only the intricate language of leaves, bark, and soil. Gathering is physical, yes. Backs ache, hands grow dirty, knees press into earth. It is not light work. It is steady, repetitive, and requires endurance, but it is also cognitive labor of the highest order. To carry in one's mind the edible and the poisonous, the medicinal and the useless, the seasonal and the transient, this is a living encyclopedia. In this history for sleep, let that image rest gently within you. Early humans did not survive by chance. They survived by careful listening to environments that could not be dominated, only understood. As the woven baskets slowly fill with roots and leaves, you sense a quiet satisfaction spreading through the group. No triumphant shout announces success, only a shared awareness that today's needs will likely be met. The forest has offered, and the gatherers have responded wisely. You look at the elder once more as she rises slowly, adjusting the strap of her carrying pouch across her shoulder. In her measured steps is the dignity of accumulated knowledge. In her calm eyes, the memory of seasons long before your own. And as sunlight shifts overhead and filters through branches in shifting gold patterns, you realize that the backbone of Paleolithic survival was not violence, not conquest, but relationship. Relationship to land, relationship to memory, relationship to those who remember best. You leave the shade of the forest gradually, the woven baskets of gathered roots resting safely behind you in the care of those who remain. Ahead lies open ground once more, stretching toward low hills that shimmer faintly in the strengthening sun. The air feels different here, thinner, brighter. This is where another rhythm begins. In this chapter of What Did Early Humans Actually Do All Day? History for Sleep, we step into the part of the story often exaggerated by modern imagination: hunting. Not the explosive spectacle of Hollywood, not dramatic charges or triumphant roars, but something quieter, slower, far more demanding. Kan nui hum ka mong vut, hum ka rang nang sak ben yuke san moi hak. Our species was not built with obvious weapons. The only true advantages we carried into the Paleolithic landscape were the ability to sweat and the ability to think. That is the hook beneath the surface of persistence hunting, the ancient strategy that turned fragility into strength. The ground beneath your feet changes from soft leaf litter to dry grass and scattered stones. Each step must be placed carefully. You move in a small group, not tightly clustered, but spaced just enough to see one another without creating unnecessary noise. The soundscape narrows, the faint crunch of dried leaves, the whisper of breath through the nose, the occasional brush of fabric against skin. Hunting, in reality, is 90% observation. You crouch beside a faint impression in the soil, a hoof print, fresh enough that its edges are still defined. You study it with focused stillness. Which direction? How long ago? Was the animal moving slowly, grazing, or already alert? Anthropological studies, including those referenced in Man the Hunter and later work among the Hadza, suggest that tracking skills were sophisticated and deeply practiced. A broken blade of grass, a slight depression in dust, a subtle shift in scent carried by wind. The hunt unfolds like reading a complex text written across earth and air. You rise and move again, not running, not rushing. The animal is somewhere ahead, unaware perhaps that its story is being followed step by step. Hours may pass this way. The sun climbs higher. Sweat forms along your back and chest, not from frantic sprinting, but from steady movement under growing heat. This is where the deeper strategy of persistence hunting emerges. Unlike predators built for short bursts of speed, humans evolved as endurance specialists. Our long legs, spring-like tendons, upright posture, and most crucially, our capacity to sweat efficiently allowed us to regulate heat during prolonged exertion. Many quadrupeds must pant to cool themselves, limiting their ability to run continuously in high temperatures. But you can continue, slowly, relentlessly. The animal may flee at first sight, bolting into the distance in a sudden burst of power. You do not chase in panic, you follow. When it stops to rest, you close the distance again. When it runs, you continue at a sustainable pace. The sun becomes your ally. Heat builds in the animal's body faster than it can dissipate. This is not cruelty, it is ecology, a negotiation between physiology and landscape. Over time, fatigue accumulates, muscles tremble, breathing grows ragged. Eventually, the advantage shifts. This is not cinematic heroism, it is strategy layered over biology. In the Paleolithic world, hunting demanded patience, coordination, and intimate understanding of terrain. The brain worked constantly, predicting routes, anticipating water sources, reading subtle behavioral cues. There is a profound, quiet intensity in this work. It is not loud masculinity, it is disciplined focus. As you continue forward under the brightening sky, sweat tracing paths along your ribs, you feel both small and powerful. Small in the vast openness of the valley, powerful in your ability to endure. This is the paradox of human hunting. No claws, no fangs, only sweat and thought. And as we continue this history for sleep, allow the rhythm of those steady footsteps to slow your own breathing. The hunt is not about violence, it is about persistence.
The sun now stands high enough to press its warmth firmly against your skin.
The open plain shimmers faintly, and the air above the ground trembles in soft waves of heat. Ahead, far enough to seem almost imagined, the animal moves again. Not in a wild sprint this time, but in a strained, uncertain gait. This is where the story of persistence hunting deepens, not as spectacle, but as physiology unfolding slowly across distance. You do not shout, you do not charge, you simply continue, step after step, breath steady, eyes attentive. The sound beneath your feet shifts from brittle leaves to dry soil that releases small puffs of dust with each landing. Your heart beats faster now, but not frantically. This is a pace that can be sustained for hours. Anthropologists and evolutionary biologists have long noted that humans are uniquely adapted for endurance running. Our Achilles tendon stores and releases energy like a spring. Our gluteal muscles stabilize the torso. Our sweat glands cool us efficiently across large areas of skin. In the Paleolithic world, these traits were not athletic curiosities, they were survival tools. You are not faster than the antelope in a short burst, you are more patient than it is over time. The animal glances back once, startled by your continued presence. It expected a brief chase, a failed attempt, a predator that would abandon pursuit. But you do not abandon. You remain visible, distant but constant. This is psychological as well as physical pressure. The animal must keep moving, must keep fleeing even when its muscles begin to burn and its breath grows heavy. You too feel fatigue. Sweat drips into your eyes, your calves tighten. The sun presses harder against your shoulders, but your body, shaped by countless generations of hunter-gatherers, regulates itself. You slow slightly to avoid overheating. You drink from a small water pouch when necessary. You think. The brain never rests in this process. It calculates distance to the next shade. It anticipates where the animal may veer toward water. It reads the land as carefully as the gatherer reads the forest. Hunting in early human societies was rarely a reckless gamble. It was informed strategy layered over ecological literacy. The knowledge of terrain, of seasonal migration routes, of how different animals respond under stress, all converge in this extended pursuit. You notice now that the animal's movements are less fluid. Its strides shorten, its head lowers. The midday heat, which your sweating body manages, traps warmth within its fur and muscles. This is the turning point of persistence hunting, not an explosion of violence, but a quiet shift of advantage. In this moment, the story becomes deeply human. You are not a beast overpowering another. You are a thinking organism leveraging endurance and cognition. The distance between you narrows gradually, and yet even here there is no frenzy, there is solemnity. For Paleolithic hunters, as described in various ethnographic accounts, the taking of life was practical, often accompanied by ritual acknowledgement. Meat meant protein, fat, survival for the group. It was not sport, it was necessity. When the animal finally slows to the point of near collapse, the final approach is careful, almost reverent. A spear may be used, not thrown wildly, but directed with precision. The end is swift. Silence follows. Only the sound of your own breathing, heavy now but controlled. The wind moves gently across the plain. The work is not over, it is only shifted. You kneel briefly, not in triumph, but in recognition of what has occurred. The hunt has demanded hours of patience, coordination, restraint. 90% tracking, 10% decisive action. This is the truth often hidden beneath dramatic retellings. As you prepare to signal the others and begin the labor of processing the animal, you feel both exhaustion and quiet fulfillment. The meat will be shared, the fat preserved, the hide cured, the bones shaped into tools, nothing wasted. In this way, early humans structured their day around effort that rippled outward into every aspect of life. The hunt, though dramatic in imagination, was embedded within a broader system of cooperation and respect. And as we continue drifting through this history for sleep, let your breathing slow again. Feel the steady rhythm of footsteps across open ground. Remember the hook that began this chapter. Humans had no claws, no fangs, only sweat and a mind capable of strategy. Under the relentless sun of the Paleolithic world, that was enough.
The heat of the hunt has passed, and the long return across open ground has ended. Meat is being carried carefully, voices remain low, and the rhythm of effort has shifted once again. Now, back near the shelter, in the soft shadow cast by stone and late afternoon light, another kind of work begins. It is quieter than the chase, slower than the tracking, and yet just as essential to survival. This is the prehistoric workshop. This is flint knapping. You sit on a flat rock, legs folded, a rounded hammerstone resting in your palm. In front of you lies a core of flint, dull and unassuming at first glance. But inside it sleeps a blade sharper than anything forged in steel thousands of years later. The first strike comes gently. The sound is dry, controlled, echoing softly against the cave wall. It is not random force, it is geometry. To shape stone is to understand angles, pressure, fracture lines hidden within the material. One miscalculated blow and the core shatters uselessly. So you breathe. You turn the flint slightly. Another strike. Tiny flakes fall away, revealing a curved edge that catches the light. Archaeologists studying Paleolithic societies have long marveled at the precision of these tools. Properly crafted, a flint blade can be sharper than a modern surgical scalpel. But sharpness alone is not the miracle. The miracle is attention. Flint knapping requires absolute focus. Your world narrows to the contact point between stone and stone. The rest of the valley fades. The memory of the hunt, the anticipation of tomorrow's gathering, all dissolve into the rhythm of impact. There is something meditative in this repetition. In hunter-gatherer communities described by Robert L. Kelly and others, tool-making was not a side activity. It was a core skill, often shared, demonstrated, refined across generations. Children would sit nearby, watching flakes fall, learning how the wrist must snap, how the elbow must steady, how force must travel through the stone like a whisper rather than a shout. The blade begins to take form now, thin and symmetrical. You shift to finer pressure flaking, pressing carefully along the edge with a smaller tool to refine its shape. Each movement is deliberate. There is no rushing this. In this moment, time stretches. The prehistoric workshop becomes a space of concentration and quiet pride. The sound of distant conversation fades beneath the steady percussion of stone. For modern listeners, there may be an echo here. The satisfaction a man feels while sanding wood smooth in a garage. The calm that comes while tuning an engine, adjusting parts until they align perfectly. The quiet joy of making something raw into something precise. This impulse is ancient. Before metal, before factories, before written instruction manuals, there was stone and the human hand learning to shape it. In this history for sleep, let the rhythm of flint against stone slow your breathing. Imagine the flakes falling like dry leaves, catching the amber glow of the late sun.
The finished blade will not only cut meat, it will scrape hides, carve wood, prepare plants. It will extend the capability of the body. And perhaps that is the deeper insight of this chapter. Tools are not separate from us. They are extensions of cognition. In shaping stone, early humans were shaping thought itself. The prehistoric workshop is not chaotic. It is disciplined. It is focused. It is quiet mastery emerging from repetition. And as the blade nears completion, its edge thin as a whisper, you sense a calm fulfillment that has little to do with survival alone. It is the satisfaction of making.
The blade is nearly finished now, thin along its edge, cool against your fingertips. But the work is not only in the cutting surface, it is in the repetition, in the sound, in the slow shaping of intention into matter. The percussion continues, softer now, more refined. Each strike removes less material, yet demands more precision. The prehistoric workshop is not loud, but it is alive with focus. Around you, others are engaged in their own quiet crafts. Someone scrapes a hide stretched across a wooden frame, drawing a flint edge downward in smooth strokes. Another twists plant fibers into cordage, fingers moving rhythmically, almost unconsciously. A young member of the group watches closely, eyes following the motion of your hands as flakes of stone fall like brittle petals. In this moment, the Paleolithic world feels less like survival and more like continuity. Tool-making is not an isolated act. It is woven into identity. Anthropologists studying Paleolithic societies have noted that stone tool traditions were often remarkably consistent across generations, indicating not only technical skill, but teaching systems embedded in daily life. The angle at which you strike, the way you rotate the core, the rhythm of your breath, all of this has been demonstrated to you before. Perhaps by your father, perhaps by an uncle, perhaps by an elder who no longer hunts, but whose hands still remember the language of stone. You feel that lineage now, not as pressure, but as connection. The blade finally reaches its intended symmetry. You test its edge gently against a strip of hide. It bites cleanly, almost effortlessly. A flint knife, properly made, can rival the sharpness of modern surgical steel. This is not myth. Experimental archaeology has confirmed the extraordinary cutting power of finely knapped stone. But what lingers in this chapter of what did early humans actually do all day, history for sleep, is not merely sharpness, it is presence. In shaping this blade, you were nowhere else, not thinking of tomorrow's hunt, not replaying yesterday's effort, only here, only stone and breath and sound. There is something deeply regulating about this kind of focused labor. Modern neuroscientists might call it flow, a state where action and awareness merge. Early humans did not have a word for it, but they practiced it daily. Whether crafting tools, repairing shelters, or shaping wooden shafts for spears, they entered states of absorption that steadied the mind. In our time, many rediscover this feeling while sanding a piece of furniture, tuning a bicycle, repairing an engine in a quiet garage, hands busy, mind quiet. A satisfaction that does not come from consumption, but from creation. This connection across millennia is subtle but real. The joy of making is not a modern hobby, it is ancestral memory. As the light outside begins to soften toward evening hues, you attach the finished blade to a wooden handle using cord and resin warmed near the fire. The tool becomes more than stone, it becomes extension.
With it, you will process meat more efficiently, shape other tools, perhaps carve small markings into bone or wood. Each object in this prehistoric workshop has layers of intention behind it. Nothing is disposable, nothing is careless. Even broken flakes are sometimes repurposed into smaller cutting edges. Waste is minimal because effort is respected. You glance around at the group. There is no applause for your finished knife, no dramatic celebration, but there is acknowledgement, a nod, a brief glance that says the work is good. In the Paleolithic world, competence is quiet currency. And as we continue drifting through this history for sleep, let the steady tapping of stone fade gently into the background of your own thoughts. Imagine your breathing aligning with that ancient rhythm. The prehistoric workshop was not merely a place of production, it was a place of mental alignment. In shaping tools, early humans shaped their attention. In repeating motions, they regulated emotion. In creating edges, they carved meaning into the long arc of their day. The sun lowers further now, shadows stretch. The blade rests beside you, complete, and in the quiet that follows the last strike, you feel something enduring. Not urgency, not hunger, not triumph, but the calm of a task finished well.
The blade now rests finished beside the fire, and the heavy labors of the day have softened into evening light. Meat has been cut, hides stretched, tools repaired. The urgent tasks of survival have, for now, been completed. What happens next may surprise you. In this chapter, we step into a question that feels almost uncomfortable. Did early humans work less than we do? The air cools gradually as the sun lowers. Shadows lengthen across stone and grass. You expect more activity, perhaps another round of gathering, more relentless effort. But instead, you notice stillness. A few members of the group recline against warm rock, speaking quietly. A child chases another in loose circles near the cave entrance. Someone hums, barely audible above the wind. This is not idleness born of laziness. It is space. Anthropological research, including studies referenced by Marshall Solons and fieldwork among the Hadza of Tanzania, suggests that hunter-gatherer working hours were often far lower than modern assumptions. In some cases, food acquisition and necessary subsistence tasks averaged roughly 15 to 20 hours per week. Not per day, per week. This figure has sparked controversy, sometimes called the original affluent society argument. The idea is not that Paleolithic life was easy, but that needs were limited and strategies efficient. When food was secured, when tools were prepared, when shelter was sufficient, there was no abstract demand for endless productivity. You sit now near the fire's edge, feeling warmth along your forearms. No one checks a clock. There is no concept of a 9-to-5 schedule. Time is structured by light, season, and necessity, not by external metrics of output. In The Hunting and Gathering Way of Life, Robert L. Kelly notes that variability existed across environments, yet many foraging societies did not labor continuously from dawn to dusk. Instead, bursts of focused activity alternated with long intervals of rest, grooming, storytelling, and play. You watch as two adults carefully pick through each other's hair, removing debris and insects. It is intimate and practical at once. Grooming is hygiene, but also bonding. Nearby, a group laughs softly over a small joke. Someone lies back, staring upward at the sky shifting from blue to amber. There is no guilt attached to this rest, no sense that time must be monetized. The emotional tone is different from modern leisure. It is not escape from work, it is integration with life. This is where the viral tension of this chapter begins to hum beneath the surface.
In industrial society, many live within rigid schedules, commuting, answering messages, moving from meeting to meeting. Hunter-gatherer working hours, by contrast, often allowed for expansive unstructured time once essential needs were met. Does this mean Paleolithic life was carefree? No. Illness, injury, and environmental risk were real, but the rhythm of daily obligation was not designed for constant acceleration. As evening deepens, you sense something unfamiliar yet deeply human: spaciousness. The nervous system settles more fully. Conversation slows. The body reclines without calculation. There is nothing left to prove for today. In this history for sleep, let that idea stretch gently across your thoughts. What if survival once required intensity, but not endless busyness? What if rest was not reward, but rhythm? The fire crackles softly. Sparks rise and vanish into the darkening air. And around it, a small band of early humans exists in a balance that feels almost radical to modern ears.
The sky has darkened fully now, and the first stars begin to appear above the ridgeline. The fire glows in a steady circle of amber, casting long shadows that sway gently against the stone walls. No one rushes to fill the silence. No one reaches for a device, a schedule, or tomorrow's obligations. The essential work of the day has been done. What remains is presence. In this continuation, we move deeper into the most surprising insight of all, that time itself once felt different. You lean back against a smooth rock warmed earlier by the sun. Your body is pleasantly tired but not depleted. Muscles carry the memory of movement, yet they are not strained by endless repetition. This is the rhythm described in anthropological discussions of hunter-gatherer working hours. When Marshall Salins described certain foraging societies as part of the original affluent society, he did not mean abundance of possessions. He meant abundance of time. Needs were finite. Once met, the day opened outward rather than compressing inward. Around you, small acts of humanity unfold. An elder tells a story in low tones, perhaps recounting a hunt from many seasons ago or a migration across unfamiliar terrain. Children listen, then drift into play again, tracing shapes in the dust with sticks. A pair of adults sit close together, not speaking much, simply sharing warmth and proximity. This is not empty leisure, it is relational time. In many hunter-gatherer societies studied by Graham Barker and others, social cohesion was strengthened during these intervals. Stories transmitted ecological knowledge, jokes diffused tension, song and rhythm synchronized group emotion. The absence of rigid working hours created space for culture to breathe. Modern life often fragments attention across tasks, screens, and deadlines. Here, attention gathers. It rests on faces, gestures, voices. There is no constant background hum of artificial light or distant traffic, only wind, crackling fire, and human sound. In this environment, the nervous system recalibrates naturally. Stress rises when necessary, then falls completely. There is no chronic state of urgency. You notice how easily laughter surfaces, how quickly quiet returns afterward. This elasticity is part of what allowed early humans to endure. The viral trigger within this chapter may stir something tender inside you. The contrast between a Paleolithic evening and a modern 9-to-5 routine can feel almost painful. Commuting, emails, obligations layered upon obligations, the sense of always being slightly behind. In contrast, the band around the fire tonight does not measure worth in productivity, they measure it in contribution and presence. When food was scarce, they worked with intensity. When needs were met, they stopped. There was no virtue in exhaustion for its own sake.
As the stars multiply overhead, someone begins tapping two stones lightly together, creating a soft rhythm that merges with the crackle of flame. The sound is simple, repetitive, hypnotic. Chuk, 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 but slower now, softer, like a heartbeat easing into rest. You feel your breathing match it unconsciously. This is not escapism in the sense of denial, it is perspective. Early humans did not live in utopia. They faced danger, loss, and uncertainty, but they also experienced long stretches of unstructured time in which the mind could wander, stories could unfold, and relationships could deepen without interruption. In this history for sleep, let yourself inhabit that spaciousness for a moment. Imagine a week where necessary tasks fill perhaps 15 or 20 hours, and the remaining time belongs to conversation, to craft, to quiet observation of the sky. Imagine evenings not dictated by artificial brightness, but by the gradual dimming of light and the shared glow of fire. The concept of leisure in the Paleolithic world was not luxury, it was balance. As embers settle lower and the night air cools further, bodies begin to recline once more on layered hides. Conversations fade into murmurs, then into silence. The day has been lived fully, gathering, hunting, crafting, resting. Nothing more is demanded. In the soft darkness beyond the firelight, you sense that early humans were not constantly racing toward a future, they were inhabiting a present. And as you drift with them toward sleep, the idea lingers gently. Perhaps working less was not a sign of primitiveness, but a reflection of knowing when enough was enough.
The fire has settled into a deep red glow, and the night air carries the low murmur of voices that never fully disappear. You notice something now that may feel unfamiliar to a modern mind. No one is alone. We move beyond hunting, gathering, and crafting into something far more essential to Paleolithic societies: social life. The heart of survival was not just food or tools, but connection. The soundscape shifts gently around you. Soft laughter ripples from one side of the camp. A child squeals in delight before being gently hushed. Two adults speak in low tones, not in secrecy, but in proximity. Privacy, as we define it today, does not truly exist here. There are no separate bedrooms, no locked doors, no isolated screens glowing in the dark. Bodies sleep near one another. Conversations overlap. Life is shared. Anthropological studies referenced in the hunting and gathering way of life and research on the Hadza suggest that small foraging bands often consisted of 20 to 40 individuals who spent nearly every waking hour within sight or earshot of one another. Social life in hunter-gatherer societies was constant, fluid, and deeply embedded in daily rhythm. You feel the subtle hum of belonging in the air. There is safety in numbers, yes, but more than that, there is identity. To be human here is to be seen. Your actions are witnessed, your stories remembered, your mistakes noticed. This may sound suffocating at first, but within these small groups, reputation functions as both glue and guidance. Conflict does arise, it must. Food distribution, romantic tension, jealousy, laziness, these are not inventions of modernity, but how they are resolved differs profoundly. In many Paleolithic societies described by Graham Barker and others, internal violence was rare because it destabilized the group. Instead, tension often diffused through conversation, humor, and what anthropologists call gossip. Gossip here is not malicious rumor, it is social regulation. If someone hoards meat or boasts excessively about a hunt, murmurs spread, jokes follow. Teasing gently corrects behavior before resentment escalates. You overhear such a moment now.
A young hunter exaggerates his role in today's success. An elder smirks and lightly recounts how the prey actually stumbled long before the final spear was thrown. Laughter erupts, not cruel, but balancing. Ego softens, harmony returns. This is social intelligence in action. The band survives because cohesion is prioritized over dominance. There is no formal court, no police, no written law. The tribe itself is the regulating force. The emotional tone remains steady even as disagreements surface. A woman's voice rises slightly, then lowers again. A respected elder speaks. The matter settles. In this history for sleep, allow yourself to feel what that level of embedded community might mean. Loneliness as a chronic state would have been rare. Solitude existed, but isolation did not. Your worth was interwoven with others. Each person's skill mattered. The child gathering sticks, the elder remembering migration routes, the skilled tracker, the patient caregiver, every role carried visible significance. Modern life often fragments this cohesion. We live beside thousands, yet feel unseen. We communicate instantly, yet struggle to feel heard. The contrast is quiet, but powerful. Around this Paleolithic fire, laughter continues softly. Someone begins telling a story of an ancestor who once crossed frozen ground guided only by the stars. The group leans in. Attention gathers collectively. The narrative becomes shared memory, and you begin to understand that social life was not a luxury, it was infrastructure. It was the heart that kept everything else alive.
The night deepens, and the circle of firelight feels smaller now, more intimate. Beyond it, darkness stretches across the land, vast and unknowable. Yet within this small illuminated space, no one trembles in isolation. In this continuation of what did early humans actually do all day, history for sleep, we step even closer to the emotional core of Paleolithic societies, the tribe itself as a living, breathing organism. Social life was not an accessory to survival, it was survival. You notice how bodies arrange themselves without conscious planning. Children drift toward adults, elders sit where they can see everyone. The strongest hunters remain near the edge of the circle, closer to the darkness, not as a display of dominance, but as quiet vigilance. The structure is fluid yet stable. Anthropological work described in Man the Hunter and further research on the Hadza reveal that small-scale hunter-gatherer bands often functioned through egalitarian norms. Leadership existed, but it was situational. The best tracker led the hunt. The most experienced gatherer advised on plants. The elder who remembered drought cycles spoke when the sky looked uncertain. Authority was earned and temporary. It rotated with context. There was no permanent hierarchy towering over daily life. You hear a disagreement now, softer than before. Two voices overlap, tension flickering briefly like a spark from the fire. A resource was shared unevenly, perhaps, or a promise forgotten. No one reaches for a weapon. Instead, attention shifts toward the elder seated slightly apart. The elder listens without interruption. Silence follows. Then, with calm steadiness, the elder reframes the issue, reminding both parties of shared dependence. The murmuring band absorbs the message. Shoulders relax. A small joke ripples through the group, easing the final remnants of strain. This is conflict resolution in Paleolithic societies. Gossip may have prepared the ground, but communal dialogue restores balance. Internal violence was costly, cohesion was priceless. In hunter-gatherer social life, exile was often the harshest punishment, not death. To be removed from the tribe was to face true vulnerability. That fact alone kept cooperation strong.
You feel the weight of that realization gently. Modern privacy grants freedom, but it also enables detachment. Here, detachment would mean disappearance. Every individual matters because every individual is visible. No one eats unseen. No one suffers completely alone. Even grief is collective. You imagine a loss within this group. The mourning would not be solitary in a silent bedroom. It would be shared around this very fire. Voices recounting the lost one's strengths, tears witnessed, memory carried together. In Paleolithic societies, identity was relational. The self was not a sealed container, but a thread woven tightly into others. Research summarized by Graham Barker suggests that long-term survival depended not just on ecological knowledge, but on maintaining group harmony. Social life reduced stress, distributed childcare, and provided emotional buffering during hardship. A child could wander among many caregivers. A weary adult could rest knowing others were alert. The tribe functioned as a living nervous system, sensing danger collectively and calming collectively. As the fire lowers further, the laughter softens into gentle breathing. One by one, bodies recline upon hides and woven grasses. Yet even in sleep, they are together. Paleolithic sleep habits were communal. Dreams occurred within arm's reach of others. There was comfort in hearing another's breath in the dark. You notice how foreign that might feel now, and yet how deeply rooted it remains within human biology. Loneliness, chronic and private, is largely a modern affliction. In this history for sleep, allow yourself to rest within that imagined closeness. The tribe's heartbeat surrounds you. Murmurs fade. Night insects hum softly. The darkness beyond the fire is vast, but it does not feel empty. Within this small band, connection hums like an unseen current. And as you drift towards sleep with them, one final insight lingers. Early humans did not merely survive the world through strength or tools. They survived through one another.
The tribe sleeps, but not all minds surrender fully to rest. The embers glow faintly behind you as someone rises quietly, lifting a smoldering branch to use as a torch. In this chapter of What Did Early Humans Actually Do All Day? History for Sleep, we step away from the firelight and move deeper into the cave itself, where the outer world fades and the inner world begins. The walls ahead flicker with moving shadows as the torchlight dances across stone. And then you see them, lines, shapes, animals emerging from rock. A bison mid-stride, a handprint pressed against limestone, ochre reds and charcoal blacks layered over thousands of years. These are not decorations, these are conversations. Paleolithic cave art, as studied across sites like Lascaux and Chauvet, suggests that early humans were not merely surviving, they were contemplating. Why paint in darkness, far from daylight? Why carry pigments deep into narrow passages? Anthropologists and archaeologists continue to debate, but one insight feels steady. This was spiritual behavior. You watch as the torchlight trembles across the painted forms, making them appear to move. The bison seems to breathe. The deer lowers its head. In flickering light, the stone becomes alive. It is easy to imagine that these paintings were not static images, but portals, thresholds between visible and invisible worlds. In Paleolithic societies, nature was not an inert backdrop. It was animate, powerful, and unpredictable. Storms could erase tracks. Ice could swallow herds. The sun could return warmth or withhold it. To live within such forces was to feel awe daily. Art became a way to speak back. In this history for sleep, allow yourself to feel that quiet reverence. No written language existed yet, but symbol existed. Marking the wall was a declaration: we are here,
and we are part of something greater. Research summarized in Paleolithic Societies by Graham Barker emphasizes that ritual and symbolic behavior are key markers of cognitive modernity. By 40,000 years ago, humans were burying their dead with care, wearing beads, and creating music. You hear it now, a faint note carried from behind you. Someone has lifted a bone flute carved from birdwing or mammoth ivory. The sound is soft, hollow, almost wind-like. It drifts through the cave, echoing against stone. This is not entertainment in the modern sense, it is invocation. The tones rise and fall slowly, matching the pulse of the torchlight. Music in early human societies likely served multiple functions: bonding, signaling, ritual. But here, in this enclosed chamber, it feels sacred. The tribe does not worship in temples. The cave is the temple. The darkness itself is holy. You stand before a painted handprint, fingers splayed outward. Perhaps it was made by a young hunter. Perhaps by a woman who gathered roots. Perhaps by someone who feared the coming winter and wanted to leave a mark against forgetting. The gesture is simple yet profound, a human pressing pigment against stone 40,000 years ago, reaching forward across time. In this moment you feel something familiar, the same impulse that drives philosophers to write, Stoics to reflect, artists to create, the desire to understand one's place in the vastness. Early humans did not articulate metaphysics in written treatises, but they felt it in their bones. Awe before mountains, humility before stars, fear before lightning. Art was their meditation, their attempt to frame chaos into meaning. As the torch burns lower again, shadows grow longer too. The music fades into breath, and you begin to sense that survival alone does not explain humanity. Something else stirred within these Paleolithic minds, a need to connect not only with each other, but with mystery itself.
The torch is almost gone now, its flame thinning into a trembling ribbon of light. The cave breathes around you, cool and damp, carrying the faint scent of stone and smoke. In this final movement of Chapter 9 of What Did Early Humans Actually Do All Day? History for Sleep, we remain inside this sacred darkness a little longer, because what early humans did all day was not only physical labor or social bonding, it was also wonder, and wonder may have been their greatest teacher. The painted animals stretch across the rock wall in layered motion, one generation tracing over another. You begin to sense that these Paleolithic cave art figures were not created for permanence in the way we think of legacy today. They were acts of participation. Each stroke of charcoal or ochre was a gesture of entering into dialogue with forces larger than the tribe itself. The hunt was uncertain, the seasons unpredictable, illness unexplained. In such a world, spirituality was not abstract philosophy, it was survival of the mind. To attribute spirit to the animal, to the river, to the storm, was to transform fear into relationship. You imagine a small group gathered here before a hunt, torches lifted, shadows dancing over bison and horses painted long ago. A flute begins again, low and steady. A rhythm emerges from hands striking stone softly. The atmosphere thickens, not with superstition, but with focus. Early humans likely believed that depicting an animal was a way of engaging its essence, not controlling it, but honoring it. The boundary between material and spiritual life was thin. In many hunter-gatherer societies described in anthropological literature, ritual reinforced ecological awareness. To revere the herd was to respect its cycles. To sing before the hunt was to align intention. The cave becomes a chamber of preparation,
not unlike a Stoic philosopher preparing the mind before stepping into uncertainty. There is something profoundly philosophical here. Without written doctrine, Paleolithic societies still practiced a form of acceptance. The storm would come whether invited or not. The herd would migrate. The cold would arrive. Resistance changed little. Attention changed everything. The flicker of light against stone feels like a meditation on impermanence. The paintings themselves may have been touched, retouched, and altered over generations, reminding the tribe that continuity mattered more than individual authorship. You stand beneath a ceiling where handprints overlap, layered in red and black. Some hands small, some broad, some perhaps belonging to children who once pressed their fingers against stone while elders watched. It is impossible not to feel the humility embedded in this gesture. To mark a wall deep in darkness was not an act of ego. It was an acknowledgement of fragility. We are here now, the hand seems to say, but the stone will remain when we are gone. Outside the cave, wind moves across the land. Stars burn silently overhead. Early humans would have looked upward with the same questions that philosophers later asked. What governs this order? Why does the sun return? Why does life fade? The absence of written theology does not imply absence of contemplation. Awe itself was theology. In this history for sleep, allow your breathing to slow as the flute's imagined tone fades into silence. Consider that art and spirituality in Paleolithic societies were not separate from daily life. They were woven through it. A carved bone bead worn against skin, a rhythmic chant before sleep, a glance toward the horizon at dawn. These were gestures of meaning. Modern existence often divides work, art, belief, and rest into compartments. Early humans experienced them as one continuous fabric. The hunt fed the body, the story fed memory, the painting fed the spirit. As the final ember of the torch extinguishes, darkness envelops the chamber fully. Yet the images remain in your mind, and you realize something gentle and powerful at once. What early humans actually did all day included listening to the silence of stone, shaping sound from bone, and standing before the infinite with humility rather than control. They survived through strength and cooperation, yes, but they endured through meaning. And as you turn slowly back toward the faint glow of the distant fire, carrying with you the echo of flute and flickering light, you sense that the inner life of early humans was not primitive, it was profound.
The last echo of the flute dissolves into silence, and you step back toward the open mouth of the cave, where the tribe has gathered once more. The stars now dominate the sky, cold and countless. The fire burns lower, its glow pulsing gently against the dark. We enter the most vulnerable stretch of the day. When the sun disappears, the world changes ownership. Day belongs to humans, night belongs to predators. You hear it before you see anything, a distant howl stretched thin across the land. Wolves, perhaps, or hyenas. The sound does not trigger panic, but it sharpens attention. In Paleolithic societies, darkness was not romantic, it was information. Vision narrowed, temperature dropped, uncertainty expanded. The tribe responds instinctively. Bodies draw closer to the fire. Children are brought inward, surrounded by adults. The outer ring remains alert, silhouettes against the embers. Fire is not just warmth, it is boundary. Archaeological and anthropological research suggests that controlled use of fire dramatically altered human survival patterns. It extended social hours, deterred predators, and created a shared focal point. Tonight,
You feel its importance intimately. The flames crackle softly. Insects hum in the grass beyond the light. Somewhere far off, another howl rises, then fades. And yet, within the circle of firelight, safety settles in layers. The air smells of smoke and hide. You sit wrapped in warmth that pulses outward from the glowing coals. It is here, in this fragile pocket of security, that storytelling begins. Not as entertainment in the modern sense, but as strategy, as connection, as memory. In hunter-gatherer societies described in Man the Hunter and the Hadza, storytelling often occurred at night. It passed on ecological knowledge, reinforced moral boundaries, and strengthened cohesion. You watch as an elder leans forward slightly, face illuminated by orange light. The voice begins low and steady, a tale of a hunt long ago, when the moon was hidden and the river flooded. The tribe listens, children's breathing slows, adults nod at familiar turns in the narrative. This is their Netflix, their cinema, their archive. But more than that, it is reassurance. The story names the fear, it shapes it. The wolf becomes character, the storm becomes lesson. By telling the darkness, they reduce it. In this history for sleep, you begin to notice how profoundly human this ritual feels. Modern listeners sit beneath artificial light, wrapped in blankets, streaming stories through glowing screens. Yet the core impulse is unchanged. We gather to hear narrative in order to transform anxiety into meaning. The howl outside does not disappear. The predators remain in the dark, but the tribe's focus shifts from threat to voice. Laughter punctuates a tense moment in the story. Someone teases gently. A child asks a question. The group breathes together. The night no longer feels empty. It feels inhabited by story. This is the emotional architecture of Paleolithic life. Fear was real, so was warmth, and between the two, storytelling bridged the gap. You feel your own body soften slightly. The firelight flickers across familiar faces. Even the darkness seems less hostile when filtered through narrative. The world outside may belong to hunters of flesh and shadow, but within this circle, humans claim a different domain: imagination.
The story slows. The elder's voice lowers until it almost merges with the rhythm of the flames. One by one, bodies begin to recline onto hides and woven grasses, forming a loose circle around the glowing coals. In this final movement of Chapter 10 of What Did Early Humans Actually Do All Day? History for Sleep, we remain with the tribe as they cross the fragile threshold between wakefulness and sleep. The night is no longer just threat, it is contrast. Beyond the firelight, the predators still move. You hear the distant rustle of something passing through brush. Another faint howl stretches across the plain. Yet inside this circle, warmth holds steady. This is the paradox of Paleolithic nights: fear and comfort coexisting in the same breath. Anthropological evidence suggests that communal sleeping was common in hunter-gatherer societies. Paleolithic sleep habits were shaped by necessity. Individuals slept in proximity, often in staggered rhythms, so that someone was always partially alert. Sleep was lighter near the edges, deeper near the center. Safety was collective, not individual. You notice how this arrangement creates reassurance. Even as your eyes grow heavy, you sense others breathing nearby. The sound becomes a quiet metronome. The fire snaps softly. Insects hum. The world narrows to warmth, sound, and shadow. This is not the silence of an empty house. It is the silence of shared rest. A child turns in sleep and presses closer to a parent. An adult shifts, adjusts a hide, then settles again.
No one faces the dark alone. In modern life, we often sleep separated by walls, isolated in climate-controlled rooms. Darkness is complete, but so is solitude. For early humans, darkness was vast, but it was communal. The fire was not merely practical, it was psychological architecture. Its glow reduced fear to manageable proportions. Its crackle filled the space where imagination might otherwise run wild. And storytelling, still echoing faintly in memory, lingers as a protective layer over the mind. The elder's tale of wolves and survival has reframed the distant howl. It is no longer an unnamed terror, it is a known pattern. This is how narrative regulated anxiety long before written language. Research on hunter-gatherer social life suggests that evening storytelling reinforced group identity and offered cognitive rehearsal for real threats. By imagining danger in controlled settings, the tribe strengthened resilience. Tonight, you feel that subtle shift within yourself. The distant predator exists, but it does not dominate your mind. The firelight defines your boundary. Your breathing slows. In this history for sleep, notice how your own body responds to the image. You are under blankets, perhaps in a climate-controlled room, yet your nervous system still carries ancient wiring. The comfort you feel now echoes the comfort of sitting near coals 40,000 years ago. Humans evolved not only to endure darkness, but to gather against it. As embers dim further, someone stirs the coals gently, sending a brief shower of sparks upward. Then stillness returns. Stars burn above the unseen horizon. The predators continue their silent circuits. But within this small band, the rhythm of breathing deepens. Paleolithic societies did not conquer the night, they endured it together. And that togetherness transformed fear into something softer, something survivable. The final coals glow red, steady and reassuring. Your eyes close fully now. The circle remains intact, fire at the center, humans around it. Beyond them, the infinite dark. And yet, you are safe. The night passes, as it always has.
The embers are nearly ash now, glowing softly beneath a thin veil of gray. The tribe sleeps in a quiet circle, breathing slow and steady, while beyond them the vast Paleolithic night continues its ancient rhythm. And you begin to understand that this journey was never only about what they did, it was about who they were. We have walked with them from the cold limestone floor of dawn, through gathering and hunting, through crafting and leisure, through social bonds and sacred art, into the fragile hush of nightfall. We have watched them wake without clocks, eat without schedules, work without endless deadlines, rest without guilt. We have seen how hunter-gatherer working hours often left space for storytelling and connection. We have stood inside caves where Paleolithic cave art shimmered in torchlight, where bone flutes echoed against stone, where awe was not a concept but a lived experience. And now, as the fire fades, a quiet realization begins to settle within you. You are not separate from them. You are the continuation of them. Every cell in your body carries instructions written across tens of thousands of years. The anxiety you sometimes feel when darkness falls, when uncertainty looms, when the future feels unclear, that sensation is not weakness, it is inheritance. It is the same alertness that once listened for wolves beyond the firelight. It is the same vigilance that scanned horizons for storms or migrating herds. According to anthropological research summarized in works like The Hunting and Gathering Way of Life and studies of the Hadza, early humans survived not because they were fearless, but because they were attentive. Their nervous systems were tuned finely to shifts in sound, light, and scent. They noticed patterns. They adapted. They endured.
and that wiring still hums quietly within you. In modern life, the predators have changed. They are deadlines, notifications, expectations, invisible pressures that glow through screens rather than eyes in the dark. But your body does not always know the difference. It responds with the same surge of awareness, the same tightening of breath. Here is the gentle truth carried forward from 40,000 years ago. That response once saved lives. It kept the tribe intact. It sharpened focus. It ensured that dawn would be reached again. You carry the genes of the best survivors, the ones who listened carefully, the ones who cooperated, the ones who gathered close when night fell. But there is another truth equally important. You are safe now. The distant howl you imagined belongs to memory, not immediate threat. The fire you sit beside in this story is symbolic, not essential for survival. You are under blankets, within walls, protected by layers of knowledge and infrastructure those early humans could scarcely imagine. And so the ancient vigilance within you can soften. It does not need to remain fully awake. The tribe endured the night so that you would not have to face it alone. In this history for sleep, let that understanding wrap around you like warm hides near glowing coals. We asked what early humans actually did all day. The answer was not constant struggle, it was rhythm. They woke with light, they moved with purpose, they rested when work was done. They laughed, argued, reconciled, they painted, they sang, they told stories, and when darkness came, they gathered close. That is the pattern you inherit. Not endless productivity, not perpetual fear, but cycles, effort and ease, attention and release. If tonight you found a measure of peace beside this imagined fire, let yourself drift fully into sleep, knowing that your rest is part of a story that began long before written history. And if this quiet journey through Paleolithic societies has steadied your breathing, you are welcome to return. Gently subscribe so that when the next ancient landscape calls, we can walk into it together. For now, the embers dim completely. The tribe breathes. The stars turn slowly above an unseen horizon. And you, descendant of survivors, may finally close your eyes.